Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Boris TV tutorial. And let's keep the education train rolling for all of you Media Composer editors out there by taking a look at part 2 of my tutorial on BCC Lite that you get free with your Media Composer 8 subscription. Now in part 1, we took a look at the first two fantastic effects. Of course, I'm talking about BCC Colorize and BCC Lens Flare 3D. And in this lesson, we're going to talk about the other two effects. Actually, it's one effect and one transition. Now, the effect I'm talking about is BCC Scanline, and the transition is BCC Swishpan. Okay, short introduction here. Let's just get into Avid Media Composer 8, and let's get started. Okay, now obviously before we get started, we do need some footage to work with here. So I'm going to come into my BCC Scanline bin. I'm just going to take my Scanline sequence here, and basically what we have is two shots. We have a shot here of two gentlemen here riding these two elephants, and then we have a shot that has a title over top of it. What we're going to do in the first clip is I'm going to show you how we can get in and create a very cool damaged TV look, because using BCC Lite, unlike using the full version of BCC 9, we don't have access to BCC's damaged TV effect. But we can create a very cool damaged look very easily right from within our Media Composer timeline using Scanline. Now obviously we don't have all the bells and whistles that damaged TV does, but you know what, we can do a pretty good job using the tools that we have at our disposal. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how to take sort of the same technique I'm going to show you and apply it to this title here, but you're going to see a couple of sort of the speed bumps that we're going to run into along the way by trying to apply it to this title. Okay, so let's come back to my first shot here, and what we need to do first of all is call up the effects palette, Command and 8 on the Mac, Control and 8 on Windows. You'll see we have our 4 categories of effects that come with BCC Lite. Now we want Scanline, which is located inside of BCC Stylize. I'm simply going to take Scanline, drag it and drop it right down here onto my shot. You'll see we now have the Scanlines here, but if I come back and hit play, they don't actually do anything. They just sit there. But it's actually very easy to get in and manipulate these and get them to do what we want very quickly. First thing, let's get into effects mode. Now a couple ways to get into effects mode. We can come up here, launch effects mode from right there in the composer window. We can launch it right over here from within our timeline right there, or my shortcut Shift and Y on the keyboard to call up again the effects palette or the effects editor here. And what we want to do is we want to make these Scanlines a little bit bigger here. Let's maybe make them about, I don't know, maybe about 9. That's looking pretty good. And we can even soften them up a little bit more than what they are. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give them just sort of a little bit of a, make the guns on the TV look like they're a little bit misaligned. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. And let's take the roll R and let's just move it a little bit, just so that the red value, you can see as I drag, the more that red stands out a bit, but I'm not going to move it too much, maybe up to about 30. There we go. And let's take the roll B or blue, and we're just going to drag it back the other way here. Very cool. Now you'll see that if I bypass the effect, we've already created a very cool Scanline look here. Now of course, again, the only problem is that if I come back and hit play, Scanlines aren't doing anything. Well, that's of course because I haven't told them that I want them to actually roll. Very simple to do right here. Roll RGB speed. What I'm going to do is set that at a value of about, I don't know, maybe about 10. Now as soon as I do, you're going to see the Scanlines jump immediately. Now if I come back to the beginning here, step out of effects mode by simply hitting Y on the keyboard on both Mac and Windows, I can now simply hit play, and we now have these Scanlines moving along. Very nice. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add a little bit of filler between these two here, just to make life a little bit easier, just so we don't keep jumping to the next shot here. There we go. Very cool. Okay, now you'll see again, it's playing back in real time. Now the other thing is that if we're going to create a damaged TV look, I really don't want sort of the image to look, in sort of its RGB glory. So why don't we get in, let's combine another effect with Scanline. I'm just going to step into the effect here because we're going to apply it here to this clip. And of course I'm talking about BCC Colorize. I'm simply going to take it, drag and drop it down onto the shot. Now this is actually not too bad, but I think I'm just going to step into my effects browser here. You'll remember we talked about the effects browser in the first part of our look at BCC Lite. And I actually have a preset right here. You'll see, got a few here, but I've got my Kevin's Scanline preset right here. All I'm going to do is simply take that, I'm going to apply it to this shot. You'll see basically what it's just done is crushed the blacks, brought the whites up a little bit. And you'll see now that if I step out of the effect, we're now getting sort of more of an old, almost black and white TV with a bit of Scanlines going on here. But as you sort of know that when those scan lines are sort of moving down the screen, it's not only obviously giving us the scan line look, what it's also doing is it's also creating a little bit of a wave going on in the image that I want to get in and I want to recreate. So how would I go about doing that? Well, I don't have an effect in here. Now, of course, like I said before, when we are using the full version of BCC, we do have damaged TV that I could get in and quickly just add that as a parameter. But like I said, I don't have the flexibility doing that here because I only have the 4 filters, 3 effects, and 1 transition that come inside of BCC Lite. But we can actually do this using a built-in effect inside of Media Composer. I'm going to come to the illusion effects here, and right down at the bottom we actually have an effect called Wave. Now as soon as I take Wave, I'm just going to hold Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, drag it down here and drop it onto the shot. It creates this very warped look, and of course this is 100% completely not what we're going for. And most people would probably immediately discard this right away and say, well, that's really not what I'm looking for. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to step into effects mode. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the amount up here at the top. And let's just set the amount to be something pretty low, like maybe 2. Maybe even less than that. Maybe we'll just set it to like 1. There we go. So we just got an ever so slight wave. What I'm going to do here is set the maximum size to be something like, I don't know, 5 maybe. And let's set, or pardon me, the minimum size will set to be 5. The maximum size will set to be something not much more than that, maybe about 7. That's not too bad, maybe even less than that. Let's actually make it about 6. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to leave the horizontal factor to be 100, and I'm going to set the vertical factor here to be 0. Now see, it's actually kind of hard to see if anything's actually happening, but if I take the random seed and I drag it, you're going to see that we're actually getting a little bit of a shifting going on here. And what it's doing is it's not only affecting obviously the scan lines, but the image as well, which is exactly what I want. Now the speed is set low at about 10. Maybe let's try bumping that up to be about something like 50 here. I'm just going to come out here. Let's come back to the beginning of the timeline here, hit play, and there we go. We actually now have a little bit of a wave going on here. What I'll do is I'll actually just zoom in on the effect here. Let's just step in. Let's just zoom in. And since if I hit play, what's going to happen is it's going to zoom back. I'm just going to drag through. And you can actually see the wave happening there. And if I want it to be a little bit more pronounced, of course, all I need to do is simply come right back here. I can actually just change the maximum size here, just like that. You can see we're now getting even more of a horizontal wave happening here. Very cool. And again, very simple to do, using not only BCC Lite, but also a built-in effect that you probably don't use very often. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to actually recreate this with our title here. What I'm going to do is just select the V2 so I can see my title here, and let's actually just remove this gap here because I don't need to have it there anymore. So there it is, BCC or Boris Effects BCC Scanline. And what I've actually done is I've actually already taken this effect and I've dragged it out to my bin, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to come right back here. I'm going to take BCC Scanline, drag and drop it right here onto my title. And you'll see there it is, just rolling along. Now what most people think that we're going to do in this case is all we're going to do is we're going to come back, and I think what I'll do is I'll just take this wave here and let's just drag it to my bin. Now, I may have already done this. That's okay if I have 2 of them in here. I'll just call this Kevin's new wave. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag it and drop it by holding Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows on top of this title. But of course the problem that we have now is that everything is actually doing the wave. And if you take a look at the actual Taj Mahal up here, you can actually see it waving back and forth, which of course it completely defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. I'm just going to undo that just for a second here because you'll see now without it, everything looks normal. But the problem is I really want to have this Boris Effects BCC Scanline waving back and forth. So how do I get in and fix this? Well, believe it or not, something has actually happened when I took that effect and I applied it to this title. What's going to happen is, and what I think I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take the title that I'd originally created here right there. And I'm just going to take a short version of it here, not too long. And I'm just going to show you what is actually going on when we apply this title. Let's just take it, drop it in here onto V2. And you'll all know that if we take a title, we step into the title, what happens is that you'll see that we have the graphic fill layer here, we have the alpha matte. But what's most important is we have this little lock channel here, meaning I could come in and add whatever I wanted to this graphics channel. You know, I could make the color yellow, I could, put video in here, I could really do whatever I want. The only problem is is that this channel here is locked, so I can't do anything to the actual alpha itself. And that's really what we want to do here. What we want to do is we want to add the wave before the scanlines. We actually want to get into the title and apply it to both of these channels. The problem is right now that I can't do that. What I'm going to do is step out here because something has actually happened by me taking this effect and applying it to this title. By doing that, what has actually happened if I step into this title is it's actually removed the lock from the alpha channel. So what I can actually do now is take the wave and apply it not only to the fill, but to the alpha itself. You'll see it waving back and forth. And what's going to happen now if I step back out is that only my title is going to wave back and forth. And let me actually just zoom in on that again here. There we go. And let's just position this here. And I'm just going to scan along, and you can see if you take a look at the edge of the B here, it's actually waving back and forth. Very, very cool. Now, of course, what I should also point out here, I'm just going to zoom back again here, is that I can actually come into my scan line effect here, and I can come right down and I can get into my drop shadow. We can actually add a drop shadow right here. That's a little bit far, I think. Let's actually take the distance, cut the distance in half, put it at about 10. I would like my intensity to be right up there. Maybe put the softness down around 5. And we can also come into our geometrics, and we can actually reposition this effect wherever we might want it to be. So for example, if I want it to be down here, sort of in the lower left corner, I can do all of that right here from within the effect, so I don't have to worry about that whole problem inside of Media Composer where when we apply something to a title, it's going to trickle down and apply it to the background as well. We can do all of this cool stuff right from within the effect itself, making our job so much easier. This is why in most cases I tell people, for a lot of the effects work that you want to do, if you want to get in and have control over, even more control over your drop shadows or anything like that, you can add it onto an effect like Scanline and then just get in and reposition everything right from within one effect. No need to start getting in and stacking anything. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about BCC Swishpan. So what I'm going to do here is let's just switch sequences here. I'm just going to switch over to Swishpan here. And what we have here is we've got a couple things going on here. I've got two shots here that I'm going to apply Swishpan to. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply Swishpan to these titles here. And I'm going to show you how we can get in very quickly and very easily and have these titles swish on and swish off. Okay, so let's talk about our transition first. Now, much like with all of our other effects, what we're going to do is hit Command and 8 to call up the effects palette. Of course, we're going to come back up to the top to our 4 BCC categories. Of course, BCC Swishpan is a transition. So I'm simply going to click on that category. There is BCC Swishpan right there. I'm going to simply take it, drag it, drop it right down here onto the transition. I'll come back here, hit play, and that looks way too long. Now the default for the transition is 1 second. Now unfortunately for a Swishpan that doesn't really work very well. But that actually has nothing to do with Boris effects here. That is just a limitation of the AVX architecture. It wants everything to be 1 second here when applied the way that I applied it by dragging and dropping it. So let's get in here and let's step into effects mode. I'm simply going to select the transition. And the first thing I'm going to do before we get in and talk about anything else is I'm going to come right down here and let's just shorten this up. Let's maybe make this about, 12 frames. Just so that it's a super fast transition. Let's step out, let's hit play. That's already better. That's more of what a Swishpan should be. Okay. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to step back into this transition because I wanted to show this to you here. You'll see that we actually have some on-screen widgets that we actually can get in and do some control of. So for example, if I wanted to get in and add a little bit of an ease in and an ease out, or it's actually an ease out and an ease in of this transition, all I actually need to do is just come right down to the bottom here and I can actually add that ease in just like that. And I can do the exact same thing up here with the ease out. So now what we have is a little bit of a different look with our transition. There we go. But by doing that, what we've actually done is introduce another problem. Take a look at what's happening now with the ease in. Before, I'm just going to undo what I just did here. Let's get to the point where we had it before. What I'll actually do is see, that's actually good. We'll just get it back to the point where it's a second long. Let's just make it 12 frames again. And let's go through this frame by frame. And I want you to take a look at what's happening over here at the right edge of the frame. You'll see right now, as soon as it starts the transition, everything blurs immediately. But by doing what I just showed you, by getting in and actually easing this in, and you'll see it already eases out, what we've actually done is we've introduced a couple frames of no blur right there. See? Take a look. And the blur starts to kick in there. And you know what? At 12 frames, it's probably not that noticeable, but you can actually see a little bit of it. It's almost like a little bit of a jump when it starts. So what do? Well, I guess we just don't use the ease in and ease out. You know, that solves our problem. No, that's not what we're going to do. What we're actually going to do is just get in and just tell the effect that we want the blur to happen a little bit sooner than it is right now. So what I'm going to do is step back into effects mode. We'll just park it sort of where we are so I can see the edge of that hard edge of that frame. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my blur extras right here. I'm going to twirl that down, and the parameter that I want to adjust is the blur delay. You'll see right now it has a value of 10. All I'm going to do is simply take that and start dragging it back the other way, and there we go. You'll see now, once I get to about, let's sort of park it at about -10, you'll see now we're actually at the second frame of this transition. You'll see now that we've actually lost that because it started to pre-blur the transition. So that way, as soon as that first solid frame appeared, we're actually already blurring the image just like that. So we've actually compensated for that ease in and ease out. Now you'll see that if I step out, it's a much smoother transition. We don't have that little bit of a jump when the edge of that frame appears. And believe it or not, this is a pretty darn good looking Swishpan. Now, of course, if I wanted it to go the other way, so this would be from left to right instead of from right to left, all I need to do is simply come up to my pan direction. Let's just switch it to be from the right. Now, one that I see all the time is the slam down effect. No problem. All we need to do is simply have the pan direction come from the top. So now what we have is that shot slamming down just like that. Very cool. Okay, so now let's move on and let's talk about how we're going to do the transition between these two titles. Now what most people think that we're going to do is immediately just come right back to Swishpan. We're going to take it, we're going to drag and drop it in between the two titles. Now we do know these are titles, so people think, oh, okay, well, you know what? Well, there's that avid limitation of wanting to trickle everything down to the layers below, but you know what? No problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to step into effects mode because I know that inside of BCC, I can get in and apply this to a title or a matte. And they come and they look for it and they can't find it. Well, another limitation inside of the AVX architecture is the fact that when you're applying an effect to a transition point, in this case in between the two clips, that title matte parameter is not available to us. So what do? We actually can do a little bit of a workaround. What I'm going to do is just step out of effects mode. I'm just going to remove this transition, and we're going to take our outgoing, or technically it's actually our incoming title here, and let's just adjust it here. We're just going to bring it back to have it start. We'll be a little bit generous with this here. We'll have it sort of start about there, I think, and I'm just going to extend V3 back, and let's add two edits here, one on V3 and one on V2. Okay, just like that. Now right now we're only going to focus on our outgoing BCC Swishpan and have it move off the screen. So let's simply come back to our effects palette. I'm going to take Swishpan, I'm going to drag and drop it right down here onto my title. Now of course, because I am now applying this directly to the title, I do now have that title matte category here available to me within Swishpan. All I'm going to do again is apply this to the title. Now the only problem is it's still not doing exactly what I want it to do because I sort of have this black background that's transitioning to this background. So this is totally not what I want. All I want is BCC Swishpan to move off the screen. Well, there's a couple other parameters in here that we need to adjust. The first thing that we're going to want to do is the layer that we want to reveal with this Swishpan is actually nothing. I just want this title to slide off the screen. So the layer to reveal is actually nothing, just like that. And the other thing is that you'll see now that if I come through here, it's doing exactly what I want. Nothing is being revealed. The only problem is I still have this black background. Well, that's because inside of the effects editor here, you'll see that I'm using a colored background. All I'm going to do is just simply turn that off. And what I now have is BCC Swishpan moving off the screen. Very cool. Now, the other thing is that I might want to delay this a little bit here. You know, maybe not have it start right at the beginning, maybe have it sort of start maybe about the halfway point, no problem. All I need to do is simply come right back here to the effects editor, and I can come down and change the animation from auto to percentage done. And all we need to do now is I'm just going to put the percentage done back at 0 here. There we go. I'm just going to add a keyframe right there. We'll just come right down here. I'm just going to add another keyframe. We'll set the percentage done to be 100. I can also twirl this down, and I can even get in if I wanted to and right click. We can even do this as a bit of a sort of an ease right there. Ease in, ease out. There we go. Very cool. So now I have my transition out, but what about my transition in of my next title? Because right now you'll see that if I step out of effects mode, all that's happening here is that if I come back, it's just popping on the screen, which is definitely not what we want. Now most people think I'm going to come back up to Swishpan, drag it down, get in there, start adjusting, but I'm not going to do any of that, because basically what's going to happen is that I want, and I'm just going to turn that top layer off so I don't have to see it here, I basically just want the direction of what's happening here with this effect moving out to be the opposite on the topmost layer so that it's sliding in as the other one's sliding out. So all I'm going to do is simply step back into effects mode. I'm going to take BCC Swishpan, I'm going to drag it and drop it right down here onto the above title. And you're going to see that what actually happens now is that they both jump onto the screen and transition off exactly the same. So let's adjust this. What I want to do is inside of the topmost layer, the first thing I'm going to do is have the pan direction be the opposite. It's actually going to come in from the right. And what we're going to do is change the percentage done here to be 100% and nothing. And then what's going to happen now is that when I come back, you'll see that one is going to move out while the other moves in, just like that. And I'm going to come back here and I'll hit play so you can see how this is going to work in real time. Actually, why don't I come back to before my first Swishpan here and let me hit play. There we goes one. There we goes the other one. So you'll see that not only do we now have a very cool Swishpan between two shots, we also have a Swishpan having titles moving in and moving out. And of course, we do again have complete control over things like drop shadow and geometrics right from within the effect. You'll see that if I come back here, step into effects mode, you'll see I can come right down to the bottom here inside geometrics. There we go. Inside drop shadow, there we go. So much like we had with Scanlines, we can get in and actually take these effects to the next level to save ourselves from having to get out of our nonlinear editing application to do this effect inside of a third-party compositing application. So I hope this lesson has shown you why these three effects and one transition really are a fantastic starting point, really sort of a jumping off point to really get you primed to take a look at the full version of BCC 9, which has over 200 effects, has over 2,000 different presets, including things like the FX browser and other fantastic features that you're definitely going to want to think about adding to your editing toolkit. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to support@borisfx.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.